So, have you ever wondered how a massive country with hundreds of languages and just countless cultures could possibly agree on a single rule book for everyone? Well, today, that's what we're diving into. We're going to explore the incredible story of the making of the Indian Constitution.
But before we jump into all the history and politics, let's start with a really simple story, just to get our heads around why a constitution is so important. Imagine a house, right? Two brothers, but there are zero rules. And the older one, he's kind of a bully. What do you think happens next?
Well, you get this. The big brother just does whatever he wants. He snatches the phone, eats all the good food, always gets to bat first when they're playing cricket. The little brother, he's got no rights, no way to push back. It's just straight-up exploitation.
Okay, so to solve that exact problem, but on a huge national scale, humanity came up with a pretty brilliant idea: the rule of law. Basically, it's a set of master rules that's above everyone. I mean, everyone. It makes sure that no big brother, whether it's a person or even the government itself, can just do whatever it wants. It's the bedrock of a fair society.
And that brings us right to the heart of our story. How did India even get the chance to write its own set of rules? Because let me tell you, this wasn't something that was just handed over. It was a right that people fought for decades.
Yeah, this journey was a long one. It was this slow, persistent drumbeat of demand. It starts as just an idea in 1934. By the next year, it's an official demand from the Indian National Congress. Then in 38, Nehru makes this powerful call for an assembly elected by all adults. The British tried to make a few offers, but they just weren't good enough and got rejected. It wasn't until after World War II in 1946 that the plan finally got the green light.
And this quote from Nehru, it just nails the whole spirit of the demand. Look at those key phrases: without outside interference and elected on the basis of adult franchise. It wasn't just about having a constitution, it was about who got to make it. The principle was crystal clear. Indians, and only Indians, were going to write their own future.
So, the demand was met. The stage was finally set. But who were these architects? Who were the people who actually gathered for this absolutely monumental task of writing India's destiny?
Well, it all started with this number, 389. That was the total size of the Constituent Assembly. And to put that in perspective, each seat represented roughly 1 million people, out of a population of nearly 400 million back then. It's just a mind-boggling scale.
And this is where things get really complex. The assembly had to represent two very different Indias at the time. You had 296 seats from what was called British India. These were the areas directly ruled by the British. But then you had another 93 seats for the princely states. These were hundreds of kingdoms that were, sort of independent but still under British sway.
So, when they held elections for those British India seats, the results really set the stage for everything that followed. The Indian National Congress came out with a huge majority, 208 seats. The Muslim League got 73, and then you had a handful of others. This balance of power was going to be absolutely crucial in shaping all the debates to come.
Now, this is a really important point to get. The assembly wasn't elected the way we think of elections today, where every adult gets a vote. It was this unique hybrid system. The members from the British provinces were indirectly elected by their local governments, and the members from the princely states, they were just nominated by their rulers. So the people of India didn't vote for them directly at all.
All right, let's get into the heart of it. The team is assembled. How did they actually get down to business? How did they go about forging this grand blueprint for an entire new nation?
Okay, so picture this. December 9th, 1946. The work officially begins. And one of the very first things they do is elect Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the permanent president. He was the one who would steer this historic ship through all the debates and discussions that lay ahead. Just a few days in, Nehru introduces what's known as the Objectives Resolution. And this was so much more than just a motion. It was the philosophical soul of the whole project. It laid out the core vision: an independent republic, a union of all its territories, and a guarantee of justice, equality, and freedom for every single citizen. These ideas were the North Star for everything that followed. Now, while hundreds of brilliant minds contributed, one person is rightly called the chief architect, and that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. As the chairman of the super important drafting committee, he had the monumental task of taking all those grand ideals and turning them into clear, solid legal text.
And they didn't just write it and call it a day. No way. The process was incredibly meticulous. It went through 3 formal readings. The first was just an introduction, but the second one, that was the big one. It was a months-long clause-by-clause marathon where every single word was debated, scrutinized, and amended. Then, finally, came the third reading for the final vote.
So, after years of intense work, debate, and compromise, the final moment was here. The document was ready, and it was about to become the nation's destiny.
Okay, now this slide clears up something that gets a lot of people confused. There are two key dates. The work was actually finished, and the Constitution was adopted on November 26, 1949. But the country waited 2 more months, until January 26, 1950, to put it into full effect.
So why the 2-month wait? Well, that date, January 26th, was incredibly symbolic. It wasn't random at all. It was chosen specifically to honor the day back in 1930 when the Indian National Congress first declared Purna Swaraj, or complete independence, as their ultimate goal. It was a beautiful way to connect the new republic to the freedom struggle.
And just take a second to look at the sheer scale of this whole effort. The time it took? Almost 3 full years of non-stop work. The final document was huge, 395 articles, 8 schedules. And to get there, they didn't just pull ideas out of thin air. They studied the constitutions of over 60 different countries, taking the best ideas from around the globe to build something that was uniquely Indian.
So, at the end of the day, what you should really take away from all this is that the Indian Constitution was never just a dry legal document. It was a profound promise. A promise of justice, of liberty, of equality, made to hundreds of millions of people. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. More than 75 years later, how is that promise being kept?